Jai Shri Radhe, Sab Vaishnavan ko Jai Shri Krishna. Day 99, Varta 74, continuing to 75. The Rajput Vaga ji. Part 1 continued. The next day they got up and again prepared Sri Thakurji's offerings. Vaga ji again went over to that Vaishnava's house to invite him, but he seemed not to be there. Vagaji went over to his house 2 or 3 times until the evening, but he could not get hold of him. They again gave that Mahaprasad to the cows, and the two of them went to sleep hungry again. Bhav Prakash, why? This is the way of the path of grace, that you should feed an invited Vaishnava with prasad before eating oneself. This perfects one's service or mood or das bhav. One should feel for others and always be humble. One should be very aware of one's own faults. Only then will the Lord be pleased. Part 1. After this, the Thakurji, whom the wife of the invited Vaishnava served, said to her, I am leaving. She asked him why, and he replied, Why did your husband come back from Vagaji's house without taking prasad? There Sri Thakurji had asked for some ghee. He very quickly brought it to him. He was in such a hurry that he forgot his clothes and shoes. So what? This is what happens in love. Bhav Prakash. Here the question arises as to why Sri Thakurji said this. After all, it is the rule in Sri Acharyaji's path that one must be with pure clothes in order to enter the temple to make food offerings. Also, if, because of the strength of one's love, one forgets the rules, then afterwards when one remembers, one should restore the purity of the place and oneself, etc. Why did Vagaji not do this? The answer given here is that Vagaji pulled the curtain aside and put the pot of ghee down in a separate place with his eyes averted. Ghee is the form of pure loving nectar that can never be polluted by touch. Therefore the state of purity therein had not been compromised. If the vessels and other things had been touched, then the apsaras would have been spoilt. In his loving mood, Vagaji forgot he was wearing his shoes and outside clothes. Love is a form of the Lord himself. How can a rule be broken by the Lord himself? All rules have the purpose of helping love to develop. Vagaji was already perfect in that subject. This is why Sri Thakurji spoke to him in this way. One might again ask, well, the disciples of Sri Acharyaji and Sri Gosaiji are already perfected in loving mood, so why do they bother to keep so many rules and injunctions for cleanliness in their seva? Here the answer given is that in an ordinary state of affairs, it is very necessary to respect all rules. It is Sri Acharyaji himself who imposed these regulations. He is the founder of the path of grace, and so one must respect all the rules he has imposed. Then the Lord will be pleased. One should not do one's seva according to one's own imagination. In his Navaratra treatise, the 9 jewels, Sri Acharyaji has written, one should perform seva according to the Guru's instructions. If an obstruction arises due to the wish of the Lord, then no fault occurs. In the usual state of affairs, the disciples of Sri Acharyaji and Sri Gosaiji follow all the guidelines. In this way, Sri Acharyaji and Sri Gosaiji are pleased and refuge in them is perfected. It is with this very sentiment that the disciples keep the rules. However, when the Lord makes a special request, then the devotee gets filled with loving feeling. They are filled with love alone, and in that moment the rules change themselves. This is not an obstacle. Why? Sri Acharyaji has written in his Vivek Dharya Ashray treatise, Wisdom, Perseverance and Refuge, when the Lord gives a special instruction, it becomes known in the heart. It should be followed in the knowledge that it is separate from any bodily consideration. The Vaishnava must follow these exceptional rules, and they will result in no obstacle. Here Vagaji got the instruction and so pulled back the curtain and made the offering. This was indeed appropriate. At that time Vagaji had averted his eyes and thus adhered to Sri Acharyaji's instructions. Why? In the Rajbhog Seva it is the Vraja devotees who make the offerings. To look at that is not within the right of an embodied soul. Therefore Sri Acharyaji established this rule about the curtain at Bhoga times. Vagaji averted his eyes when he placed the bowl of ghee, and so he was well within the rules. Part 1 continued. Your husband came home to have his Mahaprasad. Both the husband and wife had consequently been hungry for 2 whole days. It is a very cruel thing you have done to allow them to be hungry because of you. You blissfully partook of Mahaprasad. Therefore I can no longer stay here. The Lord told her all this in a dream. Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, these 2 are the companions of Charumati. The wife's name is Bhaktini and the husband is Anandini. The Lord blessed them by appearing in this way to admonish them. Otherwise, they would have become very offensive to Sri Swaminiji, and they might have fallen down again, and their return to the Leela delayed. Thus we see that the Lord is most compassionate. The woman was startled and sat up. She told her husband everything. The Vaishnava got up immediately, got dressed and ran to Vagaji's house, where he called out. Vagaji opened the door. The Vaishnava fell at his feet and begged for forgiveness. I am so sorry that I had Mahaprasad at home. You too have been hungry for 2 whole days. I have done such a bad thing. After this, he told Vagaji what Sri Thakurji had told his wife in the dream, that I was finding fault in your behaviour, but the fault was really mine. Then Vaishnav said to Vagaji, now please take prasad with your wife. If there is any left over for me, please do let me have some. Vagaji replied, we gave all the prasad to the cows. There is not even a little bit left. The Vaishnava insisted, saying, if you like, I will bring some of our Sri Thakurji's prasad from his breakfast from home. Vagaji asked his wife, do we have any breakfast prasad left over? The wife said that they had a little. They gave that prasad to the Vaishnava. The husband and wife took a tiny little bit. After that, the Vaishnava, still apologetic, went home. From then on, he would get up early, wake up his Sri Thakurji and give him breakfast, and then go over to sit in Vagaji's house without being invited. Vagaji would dress and adorn the Lord, and his wife would do the cooking and make the lunchtime offerings. When the time came, they accepted back the prasad, performed the Rajput Arti, and settled the Lord down for his afternoon rest. Vagaji, his wife, and the Vaishnava then took of Mahaprasad and got blissed out. Bhav Prakash. Sri Thakurji is unable to suffer his devotees' discomfort. When a true devotee has longing in their heart, then the Lord fulfills their wishes. Thus concludes Varta 74, the story of Vagaji, Rajput, who was a very accomplished Vaishnava. There is no end to his astonishing tale. Continuing on now to Varta 75, the story of Birbal's daughter who lived in Agra, Bhav Prakash. She is a devotee of Sattvic disposition. In the eternal Leela, her name is Rasika Priya. She manifests from Madonmad and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. She is very close Sakhi of Sri Thakurji, and he loves her very much. Part 1. Once Sri Gosaiji travelled to Agra. He stayed with one Vaishnava there. Near his house was Birbal's house. It was a summer's day. Sri Gosaiji was sitting near a window in the shade. Birbal's daughter caught sight of him there, and she saw his extraordinary form. She decided there and then that she would like to become his disciple. She went to her father and asked, if you let me, may I become Sri Gosaiji's disciple? I will take refuge in him. Birbal gave his permission happily. Birbal's daughter went to Purushottam Das's house and met with his wife, who was already Sri Gosaiji's disciple. She asked that lady to ask Sri Gosaiji to grant her initiation. She approached Sri Gosaiji and said, Birbal's daughter wanted me to tell you that she wishes to become your disciple. He then initiated her with the Lord's name, but told her to go fast the next day before he would grant her Brahma Sambandha. She did so and was initiated with Brahma Sambandha the very next day. Sri Gosaiji stayed in that place for a whole month. He would give divine discourses every day, and Birbal's daughter would sit among the ladies and listen. She kept everything he said written in her heart. Such was her devoted, accomplished Vaishnava character. Then Sri Gosaiji returned to Gokul. A Vaishnava would come to that house every day to discuss the Lord's pastimes, and she would sit with the ladies and listen. She met with them and mixed with them a lot. Concluding our reading for today right here, and we'll continue tomorrow with the story of Birbal's daughter. So, Aaj ke Anand ki jai, sab Vaishnavan ko jai Shri Krishna, jai jai Shri Radhe.